my fellow comic book collectors. It's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Sunday video where I look at the hottest Golden Age comics for the week. And let's get right into it. Number 10 on the list is True Crime Comics, number 3. This is from Magazine Village, and it was from 1948. It's got Jack Cole art, and it's a classic cover. It's like basically, maybe a gangster kind of cover where they're just shooting a whole bunch of bullets, and it spells rat, with blood and with holes in the guy's body. Just a classic cover. Also features a drug story inside, which adds extra little bit of cachet to the book as well. So two reasons why it's considered a must-have book. This was an interesting one. This was a 4.0 green label. It's missing half of page 21 inside, and it's sold for $339. Now, it also had slightly brittle pages, so there's a lot kind of going wrong with this book, but it did actually present quite well. So the previous record for this book in this grade, I guess, was $499 back in December of 2018. So this book has dropped quite significantly in that time period. And there was a blue label that just recently sold. So if you want to compare it to how much would a blue label go for, there was a blue label that sold for $1,080 in April of 2025. So this was a really low sale. I actually think that somebody got a really good deal on this one. Basically, it should have sold for around that $500 mark, would have been a fair price. So somebody got a really good deal on it. There are 61 of these on the census, and 57 of them are universal blue labels. Number 9 on the list is Crown Comics number 1. This is from McCobb's, 1944, and it may be, and it's one of those things where it's not necessarily known, but it might be Matt Baker who did the cover. That's significant because if it is a Matt Baker cover, and it would have been his pencils, not coloring or anything like that, but just his pencils. If it was Matt Baker's pencils, it would be his first published cover. So it's kind of it's one of those mystery ones. And I think this is one of those kind of key books that's very underrated. It's, if it's proven to be Matt Baker's first published cover, then it could be a very, very important book for Matt Baker collectors. I always thought this one was a little bit underrated. This was a 4.0 that sold, and it sold for $425. Now, that's actually down from its previous record, which was back in March of 2024 for $550. Now, this was actually an interesting sale because it was originally listed at $600, and they took a best offer of the $425. So it was actually listed for what it probably is worth, and then they were willing to take a little bit of a cut on it. So it's an interesting one that way. I'm not sure why they sold it for under fair market value, but they did. So there's 35 of these on the census, and 34 of them are universal blue labels. Number 8 on the list is Weird Terror number 7. This is from Comic Media, 1953. It's a Don Heck cover, and it's a crazy cover. It's basically, you see it from the perspective of the guy who is basically inside of a furnace. All you see is his arm hanging out of the furnace, while somebody, like some evil guy, is like shoveling coal or something to help the furnace burn the man. It's a crazy cover. Very great pre-code kind of cover. Pre-code horror, I should say. This was a 3.5 that sold, and it's also another best offer. It originally was listed at $800, and somebody took $650 for it. So that's actually a so-so sale. The previous sale for this book, just recent sale, I should say, was $565 in March of 2023. But it actually had sold for more in the past. Back in 2022, height of COVID, it sold for $780. So this is kind of a recovery sale. It's kind of in between where it maxed out in COVID and its recent sales. So it is up from that previous sale. There was actually, the funny thing is, the pre-COVID price for this book was $660 back in 2020. So this is almost back to where it was before COVID, which is kind of messed up. This is still not that strong of a sale. I'm kind of seeing a little bit of weakness in the market, actually, which is interesting. I think people are, sort of taking low offers, and I think people are, maybe hurting a bit. So that's what I'm seeing, a little bit of softness in the market here. There are 55 of these on the census, and 54 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 7 on the list is Classic Comics number 8. This is also known as Arabian Nights. It's from Gilberton, 1943. And this is an interesting one. It's a Lillian Chesney cover, but it's the original Arabian Nights comic. Now, there's multiple versions of this book, but this is the original, the first printing. It's the January edition rather than the December edition, which would be the reprint. These kind of classic comics had multiple printings, and they would go into like the HRN numbers, and it's like, it's like some complicated system. I can never figure it out, but this is the previous before the HRN numbers, where it's actually the original edition. So it makes it a more desirable book because it is a first print. This was an 8.0 that sold, and it sold for $1,245, which is actually down from its previous record, and you'll be surprised by this one. So the previous record for this book was set back in November of 2006. So way back when, 20 years almost now. It sold for $1,554. So this book has really plummeted from that big sale back in 2006. Now, the interesting thing was it doesn't sell that often. There was a bunch of sales between 2014 and 2015 where it was kind of averaging around $600. But the last sale was actually still only in 2015, so 10 years ago. And that sale, that was the record up till now, because there was no sales in between. And back in 2015, it sold for $657. So this is about twice what it had sold for 10 years ago, but about $300 less than what it sold for 20 years ago. So it's really odd history about this book. I'm not sure why. It's kind of up and down, but it looks like it's back on that upward trend. So it's kind of an interesting one. There's 77 of these on the census, and 72 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 6 on the list is Tim Holt number 11. This is from Magazine Enterprises, 1949. It's a photo cover, but it features the very first appearance of the Ghost Rider, and that's Rex Fury. It's not the one that we know from Marvel, but the interesting thing was this character was impacted by Marvel, because when Magazine Enterprises kind of went belly up, it lost the rights. The rights for this character sort of went public domain, and it was basically picked up again by AC Comics, and they actually changed the character's name because it had been used in Marvel as, the character that we all know with the motorcycle and all that kind of stuff. And so they had to change the character's name, and they called this character, this original Ghost Rider, the Haunted Horseman. So kind of a little extra, a little trivia there. So interesting one. This was a 3.0 that sold, and it sold for another best offer. It was originally listed at $1,660, and it sold for a best offer of $1,500, which is again under fair market value. Somebody again sold it below fair market value. The previous record for this book was set back in June of 2024 for $1,550. So a little bit below fair market value. So people seem to be willing to take a little bit of a loss on these books. There's 90 of these on the census, and 86 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 5 on the list is Superman number 9. This is from DC Comics, 1941. It's a Fred Ray cover, and it's a great yellow cover with Superman smashing through the cover. It's kind of a classic cover. And this was a 4.5 that sold, and it sold for $1,825.01. I thought that was kind of cute because basically probably somebody sniped it with that 1 cent. I think that's a really cool one. It was an eBay sale. Now, the previous record for this book was set back in February of 2021 for $2,155. So this is below that kind of, again, COVID price for this book. Now, the last sale was this book had gone down after COVID. The last sale was $1,770. So this is kind of coming a bit back up, closer to where it sold in COVID, but still not a strong sale. So that was in July of 2024 that it sold for $1,770. So still weak, a little bit of a weak market, but slightly recovering, if that makes sense. There's 274 of these on the census, and 213 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 4 on the list is Weird Science number 16. This is from EC Comics, 1952. It's a Wally Wood cover, and it's a classic book. I mean, this is probably one of the best known covers for sci-fi. And the reason I say that is this cover inspired Mars Attacks. And basically, they commissioned a bunch of, cards that were for, I think it's Topps that created the cards. And they, where it was Mars Attacks, and that became a classic sci-fi thing. This also has an ad for it, ad inside for Mad number 1, which is another major book from the Golden Age. So just an interesting one. This was a 7.0, again a best offer, kind of. I don't know. This was a weird one. So what happened was this was an eBay auction. And it sold for originally $2,134. It was Blizzard who sold it, actually. And then 4 days later, Blizzard sold it for a buy it now for $1,451. I have a feeling what happened was the person who bought it at $2,100 reneged on the sale, and then Blizzard just basically had to sell it quickly to the next bidder, and the next bid was $1,451. So yeah, it was kind of a weird situation. So this sold for $1,451, and that's actually a record for this book, because the previous record for this book was set back in 2022 for $1,300. Again, it was sort of like one of these weird COVID boost ones. A lot of these had records during COVID, because afterwards it had dropped quite significantly. So it sold for $1,300 during COVID, and then the last sale was back in December of 2024 for $900. So it had actually dropped almost 40% from COVID, and now it's recovered and actually gone above the COVID price. So it was actually a pretty solid sale. So one really strong sale so far. There's 186 of these on the census, and 175 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 3 on the list is Detective Comics number 36. This is from DC Comics, 1940, it's a Bob Kane cover, and it's the first appearance of Hugo Strange. The interesting thing about Hugo Strange is he can use mind control, and he's one of the few characters that, or villains, that was one of the first reoccurring Batman villains. And he actually, because of his powers of mind control, he actually knew Batman's secret identity, which makes him a little bit more dangerous than Batman's standard villains. So pretty cool character. Now, this was a 0.5 that sold, and it sold for $5,000, which is a really strong sale. The previous record for this book was set like a long time ago, 20 years ago almost, where it sold for $600 back in September of 2006. So a long time ago, this book sold for $600. So things have changed in 20 years. Now, so we don't really have a more recent sale to compare it to, except for the 1.0 Blue Label, where it sold for $4,600 in March of 2019. So this is probably the about fair price, around that 5,000 mark, give or take, because it's like hard to compare. It just doesn't sell that often. These early Batman, they're not that rare compared to some of the other books, but they're ones that you just don't see that often. They just don't come up for auction very often, and people just keep them in their collections. There are 96 of these on the census, and 58 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 2 on the list is another Batman title. It's Batman number 16 from December of 1943. This is a Fred Ray and Jerry Robinson cover. It features it's a great spotlight cover, but it features the first appearance and origin of Alfred. So kind of a cool first appearance. Kind of like, I think of Alfred as being that next to Robin major character for Batman. We always associate Batman with his butler. So I see Alfred as kind of like one of those really important characters. This was an 8.0 restored copy that sold for $5,500. Now this is interesting because it has tear seals and color touch. Now we compare this to the most recent sale for the same book, the exact same book, where it sold in February of 2025 for $2,880. It's almost double, almost double. So a lot of weak sales, and then we got a couple strong sales right after each other. So this was a really strong sale. They basically doubled their money from February, which is pretty crazy. There are 284 of these on the census, and 220 of them are Universal Blue Labels. Number 1 on the list. Yeah, this one's really interesting. And I got to get into it because it is really interesting. This is a book we all know. It's Black Cat Mystery Comics number 50. This is from Harvey, 1954. It's a Lee Elias cover. Man, it's a classic cover. It's been on the list many times, but this one has a little bit of a special interest. And for those people that are not familiar with the cover, it is a classic pre-code horror cover with the melting of the guy's face, and it's called White Heat, and basically he's eating radium and his face is melting, his fingers are melting. It's a very gruesome cover, very classic pre-code horror cover. Probably this or maybe Chamber of Chills 19 are considered the two maybe best pre-code horror covers. This is a 5.5 that sold, and it sold for $23,000, which is a massive sale. The previous record for this book was set back in June of 2019, and where it sold for $6,812, which would mean that this book has gone up like 4 times. in that time period, which is huge. It is so huge that it was flagged by GoCollect, where it said this is an outlier sale. It doesn't match what we expect this book to sell for and all this kind of stuff. So they flagged it. So when you look at it on GoCollect, it'll actually have like a little symbol saying this book has been flagged as an outlier sale and it does not impact the census value. Well, I'm going to get into it a little bit more, but this book actually has been on a really rapid increase. Back in 2014, this book, you could have bought it for around $1,500. There was a sale in 2014 for $1,494, and that was the record at that time. But the interesting thing is there were several other sales, like a 1/8 that sold for like $9,000, like a 2/5 that sold for $13,000, and those were flagged as well, where they were outlier sales. I just think this book has gone crazy. It's like one of those really desired pre-code horror covers, and people are willing to pay up for it. And I think GoCollect might have to readjust their evaluations. This might not be an outlier sale. This might actually be what this book is going for, because there's other sales that kind of reinforce that price. So I think it is outlier in terms of that rapid increase, but it seems to be what people are willing to pay for it. So it seems like maybe everyone's like selling off the cheaper books and then consolidating it to buy Black Hat Mystery number 50. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on. It's kind of crazy. This book has 122 of them on the census, and 112 of them are Universal Blue Labels. So what do you think is happening? Like, we saw a lot of weak sales, but a couple really, really strong sales. What do you think is happening with the market? I'd love to hear your opinions. Put it in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.